Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. It's Benedict here again from Jagging and Company Associates, and today I want us to move on with the financial statement automation. And I want us today to talk about how we can automate profit and loss on a monthly basis. That is a monthly profit and loss statement, and we'll continue using Python programming language. So before we move on, I want us just to recap on what we did previously. We've been talking about automating financial statements, but so far we've done P&L YTD, meaning year to date, and it was cumulative in nature. So where we started, we started with our Excel workbook, where we had our trial balance, and the trial balance is here. This was our trial balance running from 2016 to 2018, and then we also have volume. And then the volume here is the actual volumes that have been sold within a particular year. But the year in question here is the years in question here 2017, 2018, and 2016. And we also had a budget, of which the budget here was unpivoted budget from the original budget, and our original budget was here. This was the budget. So we unpivoted these columns from January to December, and then we deleted before we unpivoted the budget, we deleted these calculated rows, of which was sales volume, cost of sales, gross margin, net margin, indirect income, indirect expenses, and then total indirect expense, EBITDA, EBITDA, and PBT. So these calculated rows were deleted before we unpivoted the budget. And then we also had asset changes, of which the asset changes just meant the assets that have been bought within a particular period, and within a particular year, within a financial year. And then we also had we had loan and investments. The loan and investment, we were talking about the share capital as an investment, and then we also have loan. We also have forex exchange receipts. Then we also had debt repayment. So this schedule affects the cash flow statement, as well as the original trial balance. So let me take you back to our Python code. So with the Python code, where we started with reading the Excel workbook. So let me just try to scroll up. So we started with reading the Excel workbook sheets. We started with this one for data, and this one was reading the trial balance named YTD, and we also had this other one, this variable, this other worksheet that was read, and it was volume A, and we named it .v. And then we also have the variable for data underscore B, and this was for the budget. And then we also had data underscore assets, and this was meant to read the Excel sheet for asset changes. And then lastly, we had data underscore loan underscore investments, and this was to read the Excel sheet for loan and investments. And from there, we started by turning credit items with credit balances negative, meaning when we have our trial balance, at times we'll get when the items that should be in credit side are having debit balances. So we change those debit balances to be negative. So in short, we were trying to tell Python code to read the credit balances, rather the credit items with the debit balances as negative, and these are the code for Python code that we did, and then we renamed the data values of these credit items that were turned negative, reason being they were on debit side. We renamed the variable as TB1, and then later we also had TB2. The TB2 we were turning debit items with credit balances negative. Then this was the code, and then we also had we also selected credit items with the credit balances. So those items with credit balances, and they were credit items, you are selecting them using the Python code. This is what we wrote as the Python code for selecting debit credit balances with the credit items. Let me just try to expand this code so that you can see what we did, and let me also expand this as well. So this is where we started, and then we later moved on to selecting debit items with the debit balances. Again, this was the code, and then the variable was named TB4, and later we concatenated the data frames. So we have TB1, TB2, TB3, and TB4, and then we concatenated these data frames into one. So here is what we are calling DT. The data 1 is equal to pt.concat. Then we concatenate all these 5 data frames with the data for volumes. Again, within that data frame, we wrote a code that was sorting the values by financial year. Then when I take you back to where we have our trial balance, we have a column. First column here is financial year. So we are telling our Python code to read this Excel sheet in terms, or rather sort, not to assort, but to sort the rows with the first column using the financial year values. So again, from there we move on to dealing with the period entries, of which we were creating a code where the user can make entries of the financial year and the period number. So the period number here was just the month, and then the financial year is just the financial year as it is. And then we later created a function, and the function here was called main. So within this function we have quite a number of variables, and the variables started from the year input, which is equal to financial year. The financial year, the value for financial year is up here where we have the user input. And then we also had pre-year 1 underscore input, which is the value of the previous financial year. And down here we had Jan variables, and the Jan variables here were for the actual figures, meaning the actual year, rather the actual figures for the given financial year in review. So we started with Jan cumulative sum, so these were for cumulative figures. And then we also had Jan cumulative sum underscore CF, I mean this one is for cash flow. And then we also had Jan monthly, so this is for January monthly. and we also had variables for data assets. Then we also had for loan and investment. So these are the codes for these Jan variables for all the variables that we need to create a monthly cumulative balance sheet and cash flow. Later we also did the opening balances variables for both monthly figures and cumulative sum. Then we also did variables for closing stock. These were also for monthly and cumulative sum. So the same principle that we used in January is the same principle that we used in creating the variables for February going up to December. So we have variables for cumulative sum, meaning the cumulative figures of the trial balance. So normally when you extract a trial balance, it will always come in it will come with cumulative figures, meaning when we extract a trial balance for February, it will be the cumulative monthly figures for both January and February as individual periods. So we had the same for data assets, we had for loan and investments, and then we also had for opening stock, closing stock, and what else? We also had for loan and investments. So all this we did for January, February, March, April, May. We did up to December. So these are all variables for or rather current financial year variables. So let me just go up again. So this is current financial year variables. So where we have monthly variables, we have asset variables, we have monthly cumulative sum, we have loan and investment variables, we have opening stock and closing stock variables. So that was for the current financial year in review, meaning the year that is active. And then later we also did the variables for the prior financial year. So here we had the prior financial year variables. So the same principle that we used for the current financial year is the same principle that we've used for the prior financial year variables. The only difference that now that the financial year is now going back by a value of the current year minus 1. So here if we have 2018, so the prior year will be 2018 minus 1, which will be 2017. So we have for cumulative sum, we have for monthly variables, we have for data assets, we have for loan and investment, we also have for opening stock and closing stock. And then what now differentiate the prior financial year variables and the current financial year variables is the LY. The LY is showing that it is last year. So this is Jan monthly underscore last year is a variable for last year. And then this was done up to the period of December. So we did all these variables up to the period of December. So these are variables for prior financial year. And later also we did the variables for the budget. And the variables for the budget we have here. The same principle has been applied, but now we are using Jan monthly underscore B to mean that this is for the budget. And then when it comes to the period from January, it is same as the previous variables for current financial year and prior financial year. But when it comes to February, then the period here we are saying period should be less than or equal to 2, because when we do a budget, a budget will be done on a monthly basis. So for us to do cumulative figures for the budget, we'll use the period as less than or equal to 2. So that was the only difference. And then the variables, they have an underscore b to mean these are variables for the budget. So these were also done up to December, and then later we add the variables for period input. And then for the period input, is just that we are saying that if the period is equal to 1, meaning January, if the period is equal to 2, meaning February. So we started with when the period is less than or equal to 0, it means that is not a period. So we need to start afresh. So we were telling in this code, we are telling the user to put the correct code, rather the correct period number. So again, we also came here else if the period number is 1. So we have all these variables when the period number is 1. So these variables are just to come up with the structure of how the data frame should look like, whether it is monthly or it is cumulative in nature, meaning we are doing the cumulative sum of all the figures for a given year. Then we did all this for period 1 up to period 12. And the variables here we had for P&L that we had also for let me just go back and start with when the period is 1. We started with the opening stock combined, meaning this one now we are doing for cumulative figures. But within the cumulative figure data frame, we also had the actual period. Like for example, here we had January actual. We also had a period actual, meaning the actual, or rather here we are trying to rename the columns as January actual to mean period actual, and then January budget to mean period budget, and then January last year also to be renamed as period last year. So we also had opening stock combined. This was opening stock combined for monthly figures, of which we had January to December. And again down here we renamed the columns from January actual to Jan, and this we did up to December, where we did December actual to be renamed to December. And then we also had cost of sales, or rather closing stock combined, and this one is also for cumulative data frame. We also had closing stock combined underscore monthly. So this was for monthly figures. Then we also renamed the columns from January actual up to December actual, to Jan up to December. And then we also had P&L data. So P&L data is the values that are not closing stock or opening stock. So these are the values like sales, direct expenses, and indirect expenses. Then we also have P&L data monthly. So the first one here is P&L data for cumulative figures. The other one is for monthly figures. And then we also had the variable for data underscore BS to mean this one is a variable for a balance sheet. And then for the balance sheet we had this these variables as Jan underscore cumulative sum, Jan underscore cumulative sum last year. So this is for last year, and the first one is January for the current year. Then we also had Jan underscore cumulative sum last year total. So these are the total figures for the previous year. Then down here we also had data for cash flow. So cash flow, we also had Jan underscore cumulative sum CF, and then we also had December cumulative sum underscore last year CF. So these are the figures that will be comparative in nature when we come up with the data frame, such that when we have January, we'll have January for this year. Then we also have January for the previous year. Then we also have the total figures for the previous year. Same applies to when we are doing our cash flow. I will have January for this year, and then the total for the previous year. So these are variables geared to the normal structure that we always have when we are doing our income statement. So they are made in such a way that when we create our income statement, it should have the structure that we always do on Excel when we are doing our financial reports. Then we had asset data. So the asset data here is just for the assets that were born within a given period. So we have for the current year, previous year, and the previous year total. And then we also had loan and investments, and the same principle applies. So we did this from when the period is 1 up to when the period is 12, meaning we did for the period 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 up to period 12, which is December. Then from there we did our cumulative income statement, which is down here. Let me just move down. So these are just variables for that I've just talked about, running from January, or rather from period 1 to period 12. Period 12 is December. So down here is when we started doing the calculation of the cumulative income statement. So when I talk about cumulative income statement, it means that when we extract our trial balance, it's always cumulative in nature. So when we talk about March will be the total sum of January, February, and March. So these were the figures that we're doing, and then the data frame here was structured in a way that the variables were structured in a way that when we print the data frame, we should have the January, or rather we should have the period in review actual and the period in review budget. We should also have the last year period, and then the YTD last year, and then YTD actual for the current financial year. And then we started with opening stock, as well. This was the variable. We also had purchases. So this was a subset data from the P&L data, where we only subset where category is called purchases, and we also had closing stock. And then later we changed the values for the closing stock to be negative, meaning when we want to get the cost of sales, what we do is to take opening stock, add purchases, then less closing stock. So since the closing stock has been changed to negative, it means that we'll just have a data frame with the last row being negative. Then we add the values vertically to get the cost of sales. So the cost of sales down here is this is how we calculated the cost of sales. We concatenated the three data frames, that is opening stock, purchases, and closing stock. And remember, the closing stock had been the closing stock values had been changed to negative up here with this just a moment. They had been changed to negative with this code up here. This is where we change the the closing stock to negative values. Then down here now, you're just trying to get the actual figure for closing stock. And then you can see now, after concatenating the data frames, then down here we are trying to get the last row of that data frame, which will be the actual figure for cost of sales. Then again later we came down here to do the variable for sales volume. So here you can see we are saying sales volume is a pd.data frame, then a subset data of where category is equal to sales volume / metric tons, and then these are the codes for getting the sales volume. And then later we did also the code for sales. Then from there we moved to gross margin. We did gross margin. We also did direct expenses. We did net margin. We did the income and the other income stock indirect income. We also did indirect expense. We also did earnings before depreciation, interest, and tax. Then we also calculated our EBITDA. Then later we did our interest subset of data. And then we also netted off our interest from earnings before depreciation, interest, and tax. And later we did our amortization, and then finally we did our PBT. So PBT is the profit before tax, and then later we had our level 10 P&L, of which this was our final data frame for P&L for the cumulative figures from our Excel workbook. So down here we also came here with a variable called level 10 underscore BS. So this you are trying to subset data that we'll be using in calculation of balance sheet. And we also had level 10 underscore CF, and this was also a subset of data frame from the profit and loss that will be used in calculation of cash flow statement. So this is what we have. So let me just try to print what we had. This is still a recap of what we did previously. So let's try to print a level 10 underscore P&L. It's a bit slow. So let's assume that the period is period 2, which is February, and then the year is 2017. So this is what we had as our previous data for the cumulative P&L. So we had also said that instead, to make it more linear, we were to drop the category column and then remain with the ledger, and then we group the data frame by ledger column. So let me just try to drop also category. So this one I will put in let me put them in square brackets. So this one here will have we'll have also category. Then the axis is equal to 1. Then here we'll also drop that I will group by in bracket. I want to group by ledger, by ledger, dot sum. I wonder why there's an error. Let me just see. Because the error should not be there, but let's just see. Let's see what the error is all about. Currently it's under inspection, so the error has gone. So let me just try to print again, and we see the data frame that we had last time for P&L cumulative. So the period is 2, and then the financial year in review is 2017. So this is what we had as our P&L YTD, of which we have period actual, period budget, YTD actual, and YTD budget. So these are comparative figures that we need. And then later also we did save this in Excel. So whatever was saved in, rather the data frame that was saved in Excel was named P&L underscore YTD dot XLSX. So let's try and see what we saved. P&L YTD, this one here. So this was the data frame. So this is what we had. This is what is coming from a Python code, of which we have all the values, but now they have been sorted from what we don't need. So let's go back and try to and sort, rather say sort is equal to false. So here group by, then we'll say here sum, then sort is equal to false. Okay. Let's run the code again and see what we are supposed to get. It's a little bit low, but it will come. So the period is 2, then the financial year in review is 2017. So these are the Excel is open, so let's close it first. We cannot save in this Excel when it is open, because it means that it's being used. The period is 2 and financial year in reviews 2017. So this is what we had. So this is the correct data frame that we should have. The unsorted starting from sales volume to PBT. So let's see what we have as our Excel worksheet, or rather workbook. So this is what we have. So let me just try to expand them. So this is the data. Apparently this is what we have that has not been formatted. Remember the final data that we want looks like what I have here. Let me just final figure that work is something that looks like this. So let me just expand it a bit. So we want something like this, and this has been formatted with the Excel writer, and the Excel writer is still within Python. So what we've done up to, rather, we've generated the P&L statement. Rather, it is not this one, it is these are the P&L YTD. So this is what we are supposed to have. So apparently what we've done, we've done up to we have done up to here. So we don't have the formatted report as like what we have. So formatting we'll do at later stages when we've done everything, including the annex column, and also doing the title of the company, and these are the subheadings like particulars, current year and previous year. So what we've done, is just done from sales volume to PBT, but the figures have not been, rather the report has not been formatted using Excel writer, of which we'll do later in later stages. So let's just see if we have the exact values. This was done up to April, so let's try to do one up to April. We see if we have the exact figures. So again, I will come again and run this code. I will run this code. So I just want to confirm if we have the correct figures for April. So the period here is period 4 to mean April. Then this is the financial year in reviews 2017. Let me first close this Excel workbook. Then I'll come back here. Then run the code again. So I'm still trying to do a recap just to make us all follow what we are doing before I move on to doing the monthly financial income statement. So this is what we have. So let's see what we've saved. If it is telling with what we have, that should be our final financial report. So let me just open that. So this is what we have. So when you check down here, we have our first column. Let me just try to freeze is it under view, or I want to freeze the pen rather first. Yes, I want us to check to counter check if what we have here is exactly what you're supposed to get. So we have our period actual as 974, and the total last year is 436. Exactly is what we have, and this is also what we have for the period actual. So we are on the right track. So this we are done for, or rather this we are done for the previous coding for income statement or year to date. So now I wanted us to move to the income statement for monthly figures. So let me just first uncomment this one out. So I will run this again. So now we have no value here. So now moving forward here, now we need to do the monthly financial statement or monthly financial statement. I mean when we are in period 3, like now period 3 is March, we should see the values for January, February and March comparatively. We should be having a comparative columns for January, February and March. So what we need to first do here is to start with opening stock. So we have opening stock. So the principle is still the same like the previous income statement, but now we are using a monthly variables. Remember, we had created the monthly variables and the cumulative variables, but now in this case we only want to use the monthly variables. So down here we have closing stock. The same principle. What has changed is the variable for monthly. Then we also have closing stock, and you can see here I'm trying to multiply the numerical values of and the columns from January to December with -1. So I'm trying to change the closing stock values to negative. Then down here we are now saying that CS for Jan, rather these columns for January, February, March up to December is equal to CS value. Remember how we were saying that we can create columns, rather how we can change the values of a data frame. So we are changing the closing stock values from positive values to this negative value that we have here. So this would be the the value of the closing stock. So let's do the cost of sales. So cost of sales. Let me just try to uncomment this one down here. So now this is the coding for cost of sales, of which we are trying to say that cost of sales is equal to pt.concat opening stock, purchases and closing stock, and we are concatenating vertically. That's why the axis is equal to 0. Then again we are resetting index and then dropping the index as well. So by resetting index, let me just try to print down here what is cost of sales before we reset index. So here we'll comment out the rest of the code. So let me print cost underscore of sales. Let me run this code again. So I just want you to see what we have as cost of sales before we reset index and drop index. So the period here, let me use period 2. Then the financial year in review is 2017. So this is what we have as cost of sales after concatenating all the opening stock, purchases and closing stock. So this is just the data frame, and then down here now we need to get the real cost of sales, of which down here we are saying that cost of sales dot log cost of sales. So this will be the last row of the data frame for cost of sales is equal to cost of sales. Then we have this double square brackets. Then now we are putting these other numerical columns within the double square brackets. Then we are summing the values of these numerical columns. Then now let me just try to let me uncomment this one out. So after dropping index, let me comment this as well. We see before we drop index, the data frame for cost of sales. So the period is 2 and the financial year in review is 2017. So here you can see we have another index column after doing the reindexing of this index. So this is what we are trying to drop on this other code for drop index, where the axis is equal to 1. After dropping this, now we'll have this other right index from 0, where the index values are following each other in a chronological manner. So that was all about cost of sales, and rather all about concatenation of those the data frames, OS, purchase and closing stock. So down here we are trying to sum the values, the numerical values of the data frame, and then down here we are trying to print the last row of cost of sales. So let me just try to print this so that we can see what we have as cost of sales. So here we are trying to print the last row. That's why you are saying that cost of sales is equal to cost of sales dot tail. So the period is 2, financial year and review is 2017. So this is our last row for cost of sales from January up to December. And then now let's move down again. We are done with cost of sales. So now we are moving to sales volume. We are moving to sales volume and other sales. So with the sales volume, we are saying that sales volume as a variable is equal to pd.concat. So we are having a subset of data where the category is equal to sales volume, and then we are resetting index and dropping index. So the same principle that we just used up here is the same principle that we are using down here. when we are doing the sales volume. And again, we've also done sales, rather we are trying to group sales volume by category and ledger, and then we are summing them to sum those the grouped ledger and category in terms of the numerical values. Then down here we are also trying to do sales, so we are saying sales is equal to pd.data frame. Then we have a subset of data where the ledger is equal to sales. Then and this other next line of code, we are doing the summing of the numerical columns from January to December, and then those columns are put within double square brackets, and then we are also grouping the sales by category and by ledger, and then we are summing them to add the numerical values of the groups values, and then here we are replacing the null values with sales. Then down here we are saying that sales1 is equal to sales.tail, to mean that we are subsetting the last row of this sales data. And then down here, as we've already said, that variables change from time to time, so we are again saying that sales is equal to pd.concat into sales volume. We are concatenating sales volume with sales1, so here we are trying to get a subset of data frame for both sales and sales volumes. Let me just try to print down here sales. We see what we have as data frame for sales. So let me comment this other one out. So the period is 2. The period can be period 1, period 2, period 3, whichever period. And the financial year in review is 2017. So I'm trying to choose the financial year in review as 2017, because 2017 we are having complete data from January to December. So here we have sales volume, and then we also have sales. So we have sales volume and sales. So sales volume is in metric tons, and this other sales is in currency values. Then after doing sales, we also now need to do after sales, we all know that we need to deduct rather net of cost of sales from sales to get our gross contribution or gross margin. So here we have the calculation of gross margin. So first we are trying to come up with the negative values of cost of sales, such that when after getting the negative values of cost of sales, and then we'll concatenate these values, this data frame with negative values of cost of sales with the values of with the data frame for sales. Then when we add the values, we'll get the gross contribution or gross margin. So here you are seeing that cost of sales 1 is equal to cost of sales in square bracket Jan times -1, and we are doing this up to December. I can see we have this up to December. Yes, up to December. The code is up to here. And down here, let me just try to push this down to make it more readable. So down here we are saying that the values that we just rather the cost of sales for numerical values from January up to December. So here we are saying that cost of sales in square bracket Jan, cost of sales in square bracket Feb up to December is equal to cost of sales 1. Remember, cost of sales 1 is the original cost of sales, but we've multiplied the values by -1 to make them negative. So here we are just saying that cost of sales values should be in negative form. So down here we are saying that GC_1 GC_1 is equal to pt.concat. So we are concatenating sales 1 with cost of sales. So you can see here we have sales and cost of sales. So let's see what we have after concatenating. So GC_1. So let's see the printout of GC_1. So the financial year, let me use one now. Sorry, there's the financial. The period is 1, and then the financial year in review is 2017. So this is what we have as sales. So you can see we have January. Rather, we have this is the data frame that we have for GC before we add the figures. So here we have the negative values here are cost of sales, and the positive values here are sales values. So we need to add these values to get the gross margin. That's why down here we are saying that GC1.log, then we have gross margin. So this is the last row of this data frame down here. So we want to add another row within this data frame to get the gross margin. So here we have GC_1.log in square bracket gross margin is equal to GC1. So we are putting all the numerical columns within the double square bracket, and then we are summing the values because we want to get the real value of gross margin. So let me down here first give you the printout again for GC_1. So the period is 1, and then the financial year in review is 2017. So you can see down here we have a gross margin. So the 1244 here for the value for May is 25,35,700.55 minus this value for 19,20,996.54. So here we are getting the actual value for a gross margin. So Again, down here, what we are trying to do again, we are trying now to get subset the last row of the GC variable, or rather the GC data frame. Now we are saying GC is equal to GC underscore 1 dot tail. Then we are trying to replace the null values with gross margin. So where you see none here, we are trying to replace the none with gross margin. So again, we are saying level 1 is equal to pd.concat sales. So we add sales, we add cost of sales, and then we add gross contribution as GC. So from level 1 here, now we are trying to shape our data frame as we move down. So before then, let me just try to print out the GC now. Print. I'm printing so that we can follow what is happening. Print GC. Period is 1. The financial year is 2017. So this is our gross margin, and that is the last row of this GC underscore 1. This is the last row for the data frame GC underscore 1. So we've only picked the actual value for the gross margin, rather subset data with the only one row named gross margin. And then now you can see the null values, or rather where we had null values have been named gross margin. And then down here we are saying level 1 is equal to pd.concat. So now we are trying to concatenate sales, cost of sales, and then gross contribution. Again, let me try to print. Let me try to print level 1. But before I print level 1, rather, hope we've understood what happens when we reset index and what happens when we drop index. So let me just try to print level 1. We see the kind of data frame that we have for level 1. So I'll run this code again. So this is 1, and this is 2017. So now we've started to put our monthly financial data into shape. So here you can see we have January, February, March, September, October, November, and December. But this is because it's because we have all the values for January up to December. In a situation where we only have the values for a given period, like now, we might also have just the values for January up to February. So when we write here period 2, we should only get the values of January and February as opposed to March up to December. But we are getting these values because in this our data frame we've put the numerical columns for January up to December. Then within our balance sheet, not balance sheet, but the trial balance, we have all these values from January to December. That's why we are getting these figures for February, March up to December when we are keying our period as 1. But later, later as we move on, you'll see when we key our period as 1, we only get the values for January. When we key a period 2, we only get the values for January and February. So that will come later as we continue coding. So that was level 1. So let's have a break. When we come back, we'll move on with the direct expenses. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Now let's proceed on with the indirect expenses. So with an indirect expenses, is the same principle that we are applying the same way we've applied in the previous data frames, but before then we are trying to add a row here, a row with 0 values. So this row is meant to create a heading for indirect expenses, of which later we are supposed to turn these zeros Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Now let's proceed on with the indirect expenses. So with an indirect expenses, is the same principle that we are applying the same way we've applied in the previous data frames, but before then we are trying to add a row here, a row with 0 values. So this row is meant to create a heading. We'll put the values as 0. So let me just try to print this. We see what we have as a level 4 with additional a row for indirect expense with zeros. So print level 4. We are printing level 4. So let me comment this other one out. So the period is 1, and then the financial year and review is 2017. So this is what we have. You can see we have indirect expenses, and then within that row we just have 0 values. So these 0 values we are supposed to turn them to blank values, just to make a heading for indirect expenses. But before we turn them to 0 values, it means that we must finish coming up with the monthly income statement up to a PBT, profit before tax, before we turn them into dashes. Because when we turn them into dashes, it means that when we try to add the columns horizontally, we will be having strings, and you cannot add a string with a string when you also want to add numerical values. So as it is, it will remain with the zeros until we finish this report up to PBT. So let me just bring this down. So we are saying again indirect expense is equal to P&L in square bracket P&L underscore data monthly, where category is equal to indirect expense. So the same principle that we applied up here is the same principle that we are applying down here, where we are trying to create a subset of a data frame where the values are indirect expenses. So down here we are saying direct expenses is equal to indirect expenses group by category and ledger. Then we are summing the values, then we are setting index, and we are saying again we are trying to get the total indirect expense by saying indirect expense dot log total indirect expense. So this one is the last row of this data frame for indirect expense is equal to indirect expense, and then we are putting the numerical columns from January to December within double square brackets, then dot sum, and then we are saying indirect expense is equal to indirect expense dot replace the null values with total indirect expense. Then we also reset index, and then this other line we are saying indirect expense is equal to indirect expense dot drop index. So this we've seen before. Then lastly we are saying direct expense is equal to indirect expense dot group by category, and then by ledger dot sum, then reset index, and then level 5 we are saying PD level 5 is equal to PD dot concat. We want to concatenate level 4 where we had sales up to indirect expenses with this indirect expenses data frame where we have the numerical values, and then we'll also reset the index. So let's see what we have as indirect expenses before we have the rather after getting the total before we concatenate with this other level 4. So I'll come down here and print indirect expense. Direct expenses. So let's see what we have as indirect expenses. So the period is 1, and then the financial year in review is 2017. So these are our indirect expenses. Let me just try to make it bigger. So you can see within category column we have indirect expenses as a single string repeated, and then within the ledger column now we have the different kinds or the different categories of indirect expenses where we have bank charges to warehouse expenses, and then down here now we have the total indirect expenses. So this is as a result of the code that we just done. So you can see indirect expense is equal to direct expense, rather is equal to indirect expense. We are putting all the numerical columns from January to December in double square brackets, then we are summing the values. So let's see what we have as level 5. So again level 5 we are saying level 5 is equal to pd.concat level 4 and indirect expenses, and then we are resetting the index. So let's see what we have as level 5. So we'll do away with this the printout. It's a bit slow. So here period is 1, then the financial year in review is 2017. So let me try to pull this up. So this is what we have as level 5, for where we have now sales volume up to in a total indirect expense. But in our final report, we'll drop this column for category, and we'll only have the ledger column moving on to January up to December. So this other column for category, where we have repeated text for indirect expense, should not worry you. We'll drop it when we reach the final report of monthly income statement. So this is what we have as level 5. So let's see these earnings before interest, depreciation, and amortization. So when we come down to earnings before interest, tax, depreciation, and amortization, we are saying that NM is equal to level 5.log. So we want to net off the indirect expenses from the total of net margin and indirect income. So we'll add indirect income plus a net margin, then we net off the indirect expenses. So we are saying NM is equal to level 5.log. Level 5 category is equal to net margin. So we are getting this row, or rather subset of data, where the row is net margin, and then again we are saying other income is equal to level 5.log. Level 5 category is equal to indirect income. So before we move on to indirect, or rather before we net off the direct expenses from total net margin and indirect income, let's go back to where we have our indirect income. So we have talked about the indirect income, and what we got here. The procedure was the same as the previous procedures for the other data frames. So when we add indirect income plus a net margin, from net margin we are supposed to get like total income before indirect expenses. So down here we are saying that indirect expense is equal to indirect expense dot tail, meaning we are only picking the last row and the last row of that data frame for indirect expense. So let me bring this one up here. Okay, push this one down. So we are picking the last row where we have the total indirect expenses. So that last row is what we are picking. That's why we are saying that indirect expense is equal to indirect expenses dot tail, and then in bracket 1 to mean the last row. Then indirect income is equal to indirect expense, or rather indirect expense. This is another variable. Indirect expense is equal to indirect expense in bracket Jan times -1. So here we are trying to multiply all the numerical values of indirect expenses by -1. So in short, we want to change these values to negative, such that when we add these values to net margin and indirect income, we'll get our earnings before interest, tax, depreciation, and amortization. So that's why indirect expense is equal to indirect expense in bracket January times -1, And then the same applies to these are the numerical columns from February up to December. You all multiply them by -1. And then here down here we are saying that indirect expenses in bracket January, indirect expenses February up to December is equal to indirect expense. So the value for indirect expenses here should be equal to the negative values of this other indirect expense that we've just gotten up here. So meaning we are changing the values of indirect expenses to negative. So down here we are saying that earnings before depreciation, interest, the earnings before interest, depreciation, amortization is equal to pt.concat. So we are concatenating these data frames, net margin, the income, and indirect expenses. When you check here, you can see we have net margin up here, the income down here, indirect expenses down the last row, dot tail. So here we are saying earnings before, rather EBITDA is equal to pt.concat, net margin, other income, indirect expenses is equal to, rather taxes is equal to 0. Then we are resetting the index. Then down here we are saying earnings before depreciation, interest, tax, and amortization dot log. And again EBITDA is equal to EBITDA. Then we are putting the numerical values, rather than the numerical columns within double square brackets. There we are summing the values. So let me just let me print for you what we have as EBITDA before we sum the values. So here we'll print in bracket EBITDA. I want us to see what we have as EBITDA. Just a moment. Period is 1 and the financial year in review is 2017. So this is what we have. We have net margin, we have indirect income, and then we also have total indirect expenses. So when we add all these values and then the total indirect expenses, the values are negative, we are able to get our earnings earnings before interest, depreciation, and amortization. So let's see what we have down here. So we are saying that EBITDA.log bracket EBITDA is equal to EBITDA, and then the numerical columns are within double square bracket dot sum to get the sum total of this data frame. So again, let me try to print down here what we have as EBITDA. So I'll let me cut this and put it down here. So now when I print, we'll get another additional row where we have the earnings before interest, tax, and amortization. It's a bit slow because we have a lengthy code. So here we would say period number is 1 and the financial year in review is 2017. So you can see down here we have additional row for earnings before interest, tax, depreciation, and amortization. and then within the column for index, category, and ledger, we have the null values, and then the null values will be replaced with the EBITDA. And that's why down here you can see this EBITDA. You can see EBITDA is equal to EBITDA dot replace np dot null. We are replacing with EBITDA. Then again we are dropping index. So the index that we are dropping is this index down here. So this column for index is what we are dropping because it is unnecessary after indexing. And then we are picking the tail of this data frame. So whatever we are picking the last row again. This row is what we are picking. We are picking this to add to level 5. So now you can see EBITDA is equal to EBITDA.tail. That is this last row. And then we have level 6 is equal to pd.concat level 5 and EBITDA. So let's see what we have as level 6. So let me comment out this. So again I will print. This one is 2017 financial year review. Now our data frame is this. So this is what we have from January to December. So you can see now we have earnings before depreciation, interest and tax. So that's level 6. So now I want us to move to interest. I'll comment this out. So when we come to interest, it's the same procedure that we've just done with other variables, rather with other data frames. We are saying interest is equal to P&L, P&L data underscore monthly, in square bracket P&L data underscore monthly, category is equal to interest. So this is a subset of data where we only have the values for interest, and the same procedure applies as we've done before with other data frames. And then down here we are taking the last row of this data frame for interest. That's why we are saying that interest is equal to interest.tail.drop index. And then now we have level 7. Level 7, now we are adding this row for interest to the other levels, rather than the data frame of level 6. So let's see what we have as level 7. So I will print this, but let me just comment this out first. We'll print level 7. So the period again will be 1, but you can choose whichever period. So this is the data frame that we have for level 7, on where now we have interest, and then you can see interest. We have interest values from March, September, October, meaning from those other months we are taking loans, so we are paying the interest against those loans. But from January, February, we don't have any values for interest. So let's come down. So that was level 7. So let's move to this other a data frame for these are the data frame for earnings before depreciation, amortization, and tax. So we are saying here that earnings before, rather EBITDA, is equal to level 7 dot log. Level 7 category is equal to EBITDA. EBITDA is equal to level 7 dot log category is equal to EBITDA. So we are taking the last row of 7, and then we are saying, not the last row, but this row where we have EBITDA. Again, we are also picking the row where we have interest. Here we are saying interest is equal to level 7 dot log in square bracket level 7, then category is equal to interest, and then the interest element we are putting it in a data frame, and then the total interest is equal to interest dot tail. So it means that supposing we had different categories of interest, where we have maybe short-term interest and other interest for a short-term loan and interest for long-term loan, maybe interest from different loan categories. We'll have quite different lines, or rather quite different rows for interest element. So the same principle that we applied when we were getting the total values for other total values of the numerical values of other variables is what is the same principle that we are applying down here when we are saying that total interest is equal to interest dot tail. So we are getting the last row of this data frame, and then total interest is equal to total interest in square bracket Jan times -1 total interest in bracket 5 times -1. So in short, we're trying to get the values of the numerical values within this data frame and multiplying by -1. So we are changing the interest values to negative. Rather, we are changing the interest values to negative, such that when we add interest to EBITDA, we should get earnings after interest, but before amortization and tax. So down here we are saying that interest Jan up to December is equal to total interest. So we are changing the values of total interest to negative values, because we've said here that total interest is equal to these negative values. So the interest element, rather the interest values, will be negative values. And then now to calculate the earnings before depreciation, amortization, and tax, we are saying that earnings before depreciation, amortization, and tax is equal to pd.concat. Let me just try to highlight. So we are here. Just a moment. We are here, but we are saying earnings before depreciation, amortization, and tax is equal to p.concat EBITDA interest, and then we are saying ebdat.log is equal to, rather, ebdat.log in square bracket ebdat is equal to ebdat. Then we are putting the numerical columns within the square brackets dot sum. So we are summing the values, and then down here we are replacing the null values with the ebdat and then again we are dropping the index, and then we are getting the last row of this data frame. So now it means that level 8 will be pd.concat, and level 7 with ebdat. So let's see what we have. We have as level 8, so we'll print level 8. So here we have 1. The financial year in review is 2017. So let me just bring this up. So this is what we have as our level 8. So we have sales up to earnings before depreciation, amortization, and tax. So again, let's take a small break. When we come back, we'll continue with the depreciation and amortization. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Now let's continue with the depreciation and amortization. So first, we'll uncomment the code for depreciation amortization. We'll uncomment. That's what I mean. And let me comment out this other code. So with depreciation and amortization, is the same principle that we've used in these other variables up there. It's the same principle that we are using for depreciation and amortization. So we are saying dip underscore am to mean depreciation and amortization is equal to P&L data monthly. In bracket, in square bracket, P&L data monthly, category is equal to dip and amortization. So in short, we are trying to subset data where we only have depreciation and amortization, or rather the categories for depreciation and amortization. Then down here we are saying dip and amortization is equal to dip amortization dot group by category ledger and then dot sum. So we are grouping the categories of depreciation and amortization. So this the assumption is that maybe we could have quite a number of categories in terms of depreciation and amortization. Then we'll group them in terms of category and ledger. Then we are writing dot sum to sum the values, the numerical values of the groups. Then down here we are saying total depreciation and amortization. We are saying dip underscore am dot log square bracket dip and amortization is equal to dip underscore am. Then now we are trying to put all the numerical columns within the double square bracket, then dot sum. So dot sum here to mean that we are adding the numerical values vertically. Then again, the next line of code, we are saying that dip underscore am is equal to dip underscore am dot replace np dot none dip underscore rather dip and amortization, then reset index. So we are replacing the null values with the dip and amortization as a text. So let me just try to print and we see what we have as depreciation and amortization. So dip underscore am. So we'll print this, see what we have. It's a bit slow, but it will come. So the period I can use period 2, the financial year in review 2017. So this is what we have as deep amortization before we rename the null values. So down here you can also rename the null value. So you can see we have 2 lines of code. The first one is it's still deep amortization, and then ledger is depreciation. Then down here we are saying deep amortization. So this is the sum value of the first row, but since it's just one row, the values will remain the same. So again down here we are saying that deep underscore arm to deep underscore arm dot replace. So we are replacing the null values. Then after replacing the null values and getting the total for the values for depreciation vertically. So we are saying deep underscore arm is equal to deep underscore arm deep underscore arm dot tail, mean that we are selecting the last row of that data frame. Then level 9 is equal to pd dot concat level 8 comma deep underscore arm. So we are trying to add the last row of deep amortization to level 8, and that one we are calling level 9. So let me just print level 9, we see what we have. Period 2 in the financial year in reviews 2017. So this is what we have as level 9. So we have our sales, rather from sales volume to deep amortization. So let's move on to calculation of PBT. So now to calculate PBT, we will net off the deep amortization from earnings before depreciation tax. Okay. So we are saying that PBT is equal to pd.concat EBITDA deep amortization. Then pbt.log equal to the pbt.log in bracket PBT is equal to PBT. So we are putting all the numerical values within double square bracket. Then we are summing the values. Again, you are saying that PBT is equal to PBT dot replace null values with PBT. So before then, let me just see what we've done up here. Up here, we've not explained how we change the values for depreciation and amortization to negative. So we said that EBT is equal to level 9.log in bracket category is equal to EBITDA. So we are picking the last row of level 9. Then we are saying deep amortization again is equal to level 9.log. Level 9 in bracket category is equal to deep amortization. So we are picking the 2 rows where we have earnings before depreciation, amortization, and tax, and then another row where we have deep amortization. And down here we are saying that deep amortization is equal to pd.dataframe. So we are putting that data within a data frame. Then deep underscore amortization underscore value. So we are coming up with the negative value for the deep amortization. So we are saying deep underscore arm underscore value is equal to deep underscore arm dot tail. So the last row of that data frame for depreciation and amortization, and then down here we are just changing the numerical values to negative. That's why we are multiplying by -1. So you can see here from deep underscore arm underscore value in bracket Jan times -1. Now we've done that up to December. So in short, that the values of deep and amortization are being changed to negative. So down here we are equating deep and amortization for this other for all the numerical columns to deep and amortization value. So this is an example where we are changing that the variables always change time to time. So now deep and amortization has changed to a negative value, of which is just changed up here. So down here we have calculating PBT. So to get PBT is just depreciation and amortization we net off from earnings before depreciation, amortization, and tax. So first we need to concatenate two data frames for EBITDA and deep and amortization. Remember, the values for deep and amortization has been changed to rather the values have been changed to negative. So when we add these two rows within the data frame, we'll get the earnings, rather the profit before tax. So we say pbt.log bracket pbt is equal to pbt in double square bracket. We are putting all the numerical columns within a double square bracket, and then we are adding them. Then down here we are saying that pbt is equal to pbt.replace. So we are replacing the null values with the pbt. Then pbt is equal to pbt.drop index. So let's see the printout of pbt. See the so let me comment out this printout of level 9. So let's print pbt. So this is our pbt data frame. So what we need to do is to after getting the pbt, we'll subset data just for the last row of pbt. So down here again you are seeing that pbt is equal to pbt.tail. It's .tail to mean that we are picking this last row of the data frame. So here let me comment this out, and then we are saying level 10 underscore P&L monthly equal to pd.concat level 9 comma pbt axis is equal to 0. So in short, we are trying to add this last row of the pbt data frame. We are adding to the previous data frame level 9, so that we can get our last bit of profit and loss before tax. So let's print level 9 and another level 10 underscore P&L and see what we have. So again, I run this code. So the period is 2. You can use any whichever period, can be period 3, period 4, period 12, but I'm still using period 2. So this is our data frame for monthly profit before tax, but as you can see, we are having January, February up to December, but the period we've chosen period 1. So the reason being that the calculator, the variables have been the coding has been done in such a way that all the months have been pre-coded, So when we put period 1, it will calculate all periods. In this case, we have all the periods within our Excel workbook. So if we go to ITD, when we go to 2017, we have all the periods from January to December. So in a situation where we don't have rather, let's assume maybe current financial year is 2017, but we are still on April. So April, it will mean that we will choose period 4. Here in April, it will mean that we've not covered May to December, so we cannot get the values of such kind of periods. Then for that, if we choose period 4, you will not see these values for May, December, because within your trial balance you will not have the values. These are the periods from December. So don't get surprised that we are choosing one or period 2, but we are getting the values of December. So only that these values, rather than the variables or the coding has been done, cover the entire period. Then within our Excel work, we have these periods have been covered. So let's move on. So when we move on, you'll see where we can when we put period 1 or period 2, it will only cover that period that we've selected within our coding. So let's move on with creating monthly P&L data frames. So let me uncomment this one. So when we come to creating monthly P&L data frames, so what is happening here? We are trying to create a subset of data frames within a data frame. So when I choose a period 1, it should give me data up to period 1. When I choose period 2, it should give me data up to period 2. I choose period 3, it should give me data up to period 3. So you can see here we are saying level 10 underscore P&L is equal to level 10 P&L.log. So .log in bracket we are using hyphen, then comma. So here we are trying to subset data within this level 10 data frame just for category and ledger, but we are selecting all the rows. Columns is category up to ledger. Then the next one we are subsetting a data where we are selecting category up to January, and the next one is up to Feb. So we are doing all this up to December, such that when now we print level 10, but we select a period. Let me try to print P&L level 10, but let me comment this one out first. So I just want to select period 1 or period 2. We see what happens from this subset of data frames in a data frame. So here we'll choose I'll choose period 2. Let me start with period 1, see what we have. So period 1, then the financial year in review is 2017. So when I choose period 1, you can see now we have you only have up to January. And then when I choose let me rerun it again. So I want to choose period 0. So period 0 here should will give me an error because we had said that when we have a period less than or equal to 0, that is an error, so I cannot get anything from that period. But from this code, let's say maybe I say here is -1 as opposed to -0. When I choose period 2 -1 will give me a January. So let me run this code again. So this is 2, then 2017. So this should give us the values for January. And again, when I choose period 1, so period 1, it means that period 1 minus 1 is 0. So this should give me a data frame from category to ledger. The year is 2017. So now you can see with data frame only category. So this is the first one. Let me out. So thing is here we are trying to create a subset of data such that when we choose a particular period, it should just give us data up to that period that we've chosen. But now we are saying period 0. So period minus 0 means that we are trying to we are hashing that subset of data up to a certain index. Okay. So let me try to use period 12. We see what we have. Rather, let me use period 6. I see what we have. Period 6, and the year is 2017. So you can see our data frame is running from January up to June. So this is what I mean by we've created a subset of data frame within a data frame. So subsets of data frame that we have are running from 0 to 12, meaning we have 13 data frames. The first one is for category up to ledger, and the second one is for category up to January. The third one is category up to February. So we done all this for rather up to December, such that when we choose a given period, it should give us the data frame for that particular period. And then down here now you're seeing that level 10 underscore P&L, monthly in brackets Q1, and Q2, Q3, Q4 is equal to level 10 underscore P&L.ilog. So we are again creating some other columns. We are adding columns Q1, Q2, and Q3, and then these columns we are using ilog. So remember, ilog we said is the same principle that is like log, but the difference between ilog and log is the ilog is using column and row index as opposed to using column and row label. So here we are using row and a column index. So like example, from 2 to 5, it means that we are choosing the columns from January to March. And then from 5 to 8, we are choosing the columns of April to June. Then from 8 to 11, we are choosing the columns of July to September. And then from 11 to 14, we are choosing the columns of October to December. So this we are just adding the columns to sum up the quarters. So let's see down here what we have. And then down here we are seeing that level 10 underscore P&L is equal to level 10. underscore p and then dot log in bracket colon comma level 10 is not equal to 0. So here we are trying to subset data where the columns are not equal to 0. So when I come down here and print level 10 P and L, so first let me try to comment out this code down here. So now let's see when we print level 10 P and L. So when we choose like now when we choose the period as March, as period 3, which is March, it will only give us quarter 1 because quarter 1 we have January, February and March, and then it will also give us another column for year to date, meaning YTD, and then the YTD here we are saying that YTD is equal to level 10 underscore P and L block. In square bracket we select all rows by using this colon, and then we are also adding the columns from quarter 1 moving onwards. Quarter 1 is from January to March. So when we select period 3, it will only give us the values that are equivalent to quarter 1 as YTD, also as quarter 1 value. So let me just run this code and give you an example of what I'm talking about. So down here we'll say the period number is 3, and then the financial year in review is 2017. So when let me just scroll up a bit. So you can see we have I think there's a printout that I need to point out. So let me point out that, then I'll run this code again. So the period is 3, and then the financial year in review is 2017. So this is what we have. It's running from ledger to Jan, Feb and March. Then quarter 1 is the total of January, Feb to March, and YTD, meaning year to date, is the same as the value for quarter 1 because we are only dealing with January, February and March. So that's all about PBT and creation of a subset of data frames within a data frame. So this account down here, we were trying to change this row for indirect expenses to have blank values. So when I this up, you can see here indirect expense. Here we have not this, but this other one. Here we are having 0 values, but initially when we came up with this row, it was meant to create a heading expenses, but we could not have created dashes or blank blank strings, because when we are adding horizontally and vertically, you cannot add a string with the numerical value. That's why we use the zeros. So now that we want to make this indirect expense row have just dashes or blank values, I will change this row with this code that we just done here. So let me just uncomment this code. So So here we've changed that row for indirect expense, so we want to make it a heading for indirect expenses. So we are saying that level 10 underscore P&L dot log is equal to level 10 underscore P&L dot log in bracket ledger is equal to indirect expenses. Then all these other cells, all these other cells within these columns from January to YTD, we are making the cells to be equivalent to dash. So we are using a string here with the open and closing inverted commas, but in between there's a space. But before then, let me just try to comment this one out first. Then I print for you the value up to the period up to let me say up to September. You see what we have as a data frame for a monthly income statement. So period is 9, and the financial year in review is 2017. So I just want you to watch out what happens. So when I check here, I can see we have the period is running from January up to September, and then we have quarter 1, quarter 2, and quarter 3, and then we also have YTD. So there is no other row that is blank, and there is no other row that is showing the null values. So when I come back again here and comment this code now, the code down here for creating the row to be a heading for indirect expense, but apparently you can see where we have the indirect expense, you only have the zeros running up to December. So I want you to check when now we run this code again, what happens. So the period again, I'll use period 9. Then the financial year review is 2017. So now you can see the last 4 rows we have columns with the null values, meaning that they don't have values within them. But the reason is because we've changed this row for indirect expense with the dash, or rather with the blank values. So the blank values have been running across from January up to December. So where we've chosen the period as 9, even October, November to December will be having this blank value as a string. So that's why down here we are having the null values October, November, December, and then with the quarter 4. The rest of the columns have values. Then again, so it's a point to choose whether you can use this row with the blank values or this row with 0. So when you use the blank values we've done in this code, the result will be what we have here, where we'll have these other columns with the 0 values, null values. Then the rest of the columns will be having the values up to the period that we've chosen. But again, if you don't use this code, you'll not have these columns with the null values. So it's a decision that the end user needs to make for data presentation. But let's see what we have as P&L monthly in terms of Excel. let me try to, you can see the period is running from January to September, rather to August. We choose August or September. Let me just check again. We run the period up to period 9, but we are just having period 9 should run up to December. Again of August. September is 0. Wonder why. Let me run this code again. Close this, see what is happening. So we'll run this code again. So the period number is period number is 9. The financial year reviews 2017. Let me bring this up. Even here we have October, November up to December. Then quarter is quarter 1. So I think it's about the display, because the display had chosen had chosen 10 columns. Is 1, 2, 3, 4, 9. This one should be 10, but we have quarter 1 and yes. So let me go up here again. In this code, I see the number of columns that we chose to display. Let me say maybe 14 or 15. Just say 15 columns. See what we have. Again, I will run the code. But I think that should not be an issue, because we are having the last blank rows. So let me just say this is 9. And this is 2017. So we have October, November, and December. But then down here, what do we have as what have we saved? You saved P&L level 10. Okay, so this is the where we have the problem. I did not uncomment these ones out. So whatever I was trying to show you was what had been done earlier on. So let's see what we have as so I will run this code again, and let's see what we have as level 10 P&L monthly. The period is period 9. Financial review is 2017. So whatever I was trying to show there up there, like a display of number of columns, should not be affecting what the printout that we have here. So let me to so now let me move to what we have as our P&L monthly. So this is what we have. Now we have it up to September. Then up to September, then we have quarter 1, quarter 2, quarter 3, quarter 4. So these are the columns. I mean that we've not done the period of October, November up to December. So in a practical situation where you are extracting your trial balance, maybe within that active year, we've just reached the month of March. So when you select the period in the view as March, you will not have these values for April, May, June, July up to December. Reason being, by then you will not be having the values of these other periods within your trial balance. So the period chosen is the period that will give you the values. So if I try to explain that with this financial year for 2018, so let's just try to show you something here. So let's see, we are choosing 2018. So 2018 we only have the period up to January. So let's see what we have for 2018 within our data frame when we run this code. So again, I will run this code, and now we'll choose the period 1 and the financial year in 2018. So this is 1, and then here will be 2018. So now you're being told that need to close this Excel file. Again, I will rerun this code again. So this is period 1 and the financial year in review is 2017. Now you can see we have blank rows running from February to December, and then quarter 2, quarter 3, quarter 4 are also blank, but YTD and quarter 1 we have values. So let's see what we have as P&L monthly in our Excel. So when we print out this one, we'll have the values for January, then quarter 1 YTD, but from February to December we'll have blank values, and then quarter 2, quarter 3 also have blank values. So when we print this out, either I'll choose to delete this or hide them, because these one are 0 values. So that's how I was trying to tell you that in this whatever you need to choose whether you want to use indirect expenses having zeros or indirect expenses having string values which are blank. So we are having those null values of the rows because the indirect expense is having this string value with a blank row. But supposing we did not have this, so let me try to comment this out again. Supposing this code is not applied, so again you'll see we are not having this blank columns as we've seen. So again, let me try to use period 1 and the financial year in review is 2018. Now there will be no blank columns. Let me close this again. Again, I will come and run this code. Year 1, 2018. Now we don't have anything to do with columns. A column with the null values. But when you come to direct expense, you are having this row with the 0 values because you are using a direct expense row as a heading for the indirect expenses. So now when we print our P&L statement, you can see now we don't have anything to do with the blank row, and again there is no that X for the rows. So this is what we've done up to PBT, but remember this is just a portion of what is supposed to be done. So this P&L monthly, but what we need is P&L monthly in this format, where we'll have this heading for the company, and then we'll also have the Excel formatted in this manner, where we'll highlight some rows, have different colors based on the format that we want to appear within our Excel. But this will do with Excel writer, but still within Python code. So this will be doing when we'll finalized our financial automation up to the notes to the financial statements. So after doing the notes to the financial statements, and we've done the annex, I will also see now how we can format it using Python with the help of Excel writer. So Excel writer is just a module within Python code to format the output of your data frame within Excel. So that was all about P&L monthly. So when we meet again, we now will continue with the balance sheet. So the balance sheet will be in this format. But first, before we come up with this final structure, we'll just have a balance sheet where we have this the values up to total equity, but the figures, rather the Excel will not be formatted, and then we'll not even have this schedule. So the schedules we'll do after doing the notes to the financial statement and having done the cash flow. So thanks a lot for watching, and for those of you who have subscribed, thanks a lot for your support, and those of you who haven't, please do, and do please share your comments, share my videos with your friends. These are the code that I'm doing, but I'm not saying it's the best way of doing it, so maybe you could be having an idea of how other codes could be done to make it much better. So this is just a learning stage, not that it is the best. So please do share your comments and advise accordingly if you have something that you can share with our colleagues. So thanks a lot for watching, and let's meet again on the next video.